Well, good evening. Usually I say good day, but it's evening, the second day of August 2021. Hope you had a good day. It was very nice in Virginia. Clear, not too humid. Went for a run, had a lot to do today, so I'm doing my video right now. But at any rate, many of you want to know about the Marshal Service. That is my biggest area of inquiry. And no wonder, they do the Fugitive Task Force, which makes up a very small percentage of DOJ personnel. They have, 50% of the arrests and a large amount of violent encounters with bad guys. Now, a couple of things to know about the task force. The majority of the members of the task force are not marshals. They're deputized as marshals, deputy marshals by the U.S. Marshal, but they're state and local police officers. Now, what qualifications would a state and local need to have to come on there? Well, obviously, they're designated by their department. Probably because they're good officers, they're aggressive officers, they like to work long hours. Now, what they generally will get, and I'm saying generally, their overtime is probably going to be covered by the federal government, because I believe these marshals task forces, at least the ones in Maryland, are covered by the high intensity drug trafficking area funds, which is it's just a funding mechanism that allows the federal government to fund task forces. And I of course supervised state and local task forces, DEA task forces, which were a different animal completely. But with regards to if you're going into the marshals, how do you get on these task forces? And the way you get on them is you have to do your time, okay? You're probably going to get hired. I've got a video coming up, and it's a good video. It's a short one from Utah, but they follow the work of the violent crimes or the Fugitive Task Force. And then they talk to a deputy who's in charge of the courthouse business. And so, it kind of gives you a good feel of everything that they do. But, of course, expect to be assigned to the new person type work when you come on the job. You're not going to be assigned to the Special Operations Group or the Violent Fugitive Task Force unless you're very lucky. And if you are, then great, good for you. So let's watch the video, then we'll talk about it.
Well, the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the United States is also one of the most misunderstood.
Tonight, ABC4's Rick Aaron goes behind the badge with the U.S. Marshals Service to clear up the confusion.
When you hear U.S. Marshals, you may think of Wild West lawmen on horseback in old cowboy movies because they've been around since 1789. Now the horses and the six-shooters are gone, but marshals are still on the job with the same mission: tracking down fugitives and bringing them to justice.
We have a homicide out of state that's here right now. We've got eyes on. It happened yesterday.
It's the modern-day equivalent of rounding up a posse. These elite police officers are members of VFAST, the Violent Fugitive Apprehension Strike Team operated by the U.S. Marshals Service. On this night, they're gearing up to go after a drug dealer suspected of killing a man the day before and fleeing to Salt Lake City.
Over 90% of the fugitives that we go after have a violent criminal history. Child abuse, rape, attempted murder, robbery. Those are the type of people that we're going for. And of course, they don't want to be caught. And they become sometimes pretty creative in hiding. But luckily, we're more creative.
The VFAST team is made up of officers from 25 different state agencies.
Well, I'm pretty confident that the best cops in this state work on this task force, because you have to be special to do this type of work. We're asking these men and women to go after people who are violent and don't want to be caught.
That obviously leads to dangerous and sometimes deadly encounters. In August, a parole fugitive allegedly pulled a gun as VFAST members pursued him on Fayette Street in Salt Lake City before an officer shot and killed the suspect.
It's life and death, and our team knows that.
U.S. Marshals with a warrant. Come to the door, man. We have the house surrounded.
We can do everything right and still not make it home at night, and that's just the reality. We hope it never comes to that. It's my worst nightmare to have to stand in front of somebody's significant other or their children and tell them, hey, your loved one's not coming home tonight. But that is the reality we deal with.
Apprehending the fugitive is just one step of the process. That person has to be booked into jail and given a speedy and fair trial. That's where Meg Smith comes in. She oversees federal court operations, which includes protecting judges and getting defendants to and from court safely.
I'm responsible for basically anything inmate or prisoner related. It's sort of the bread and butter of what we do. We move, I think it's over 60,000 inmates in the country that are in our custody.
With only 5% of Department of Justice employees, the Marshals Service accounts for 51% of their arrests, and their efforts make us all a lot safer.
Just last year alone, our task force arrested almost 200 people in Salt Lake City alone. So that's the impact that we do have.
Whatever you do, don't make the common mistake of confusing U.S. Marshals with Air Marshals. They are a completely different operation, which is run by the Transportation Security Administration. For Behind the Badge, Rick Aaron, ABC4 News.
Okay, and that's about it. Again, the majority of the people on the task forces are state and locals. They're not federal marshals. The federal marshal's role will be to supervise the task force, coordinate the task force, provide training for the task force, and each district has a training coordinator. And that's very important, because if you're doing a lot of search warrants, you have to have training. Otherwise, you have some people who have a lot of training, some people who don't, and you have to train with the members of your team. If you're going into houses, you have to do that. Not doing that is criminally negligent. But the marshals themselves will supervise the task force, fund the task force, provide the training, and of course the warrants. The warrants are delegated to the marshals. Where do they get them? When DEA has a case, and if we don't arrest all of our defendants, but they're indicted or we get warrants for them, we have a 2-day period, a 2-day window where we're supposed to look for them. If we can't find the jerk, we then delegate it, or would delegate it. We have the option of delegating it to the marshals, and they go out and catch them, and that's what they do for a living. And our job would be then to go out and make more fugitives, because that's what DEA does. We do cases and charge people, and the marshals get to chase them and catch them. So in terms of federal law enforcement, it's probably the most fun job if you like doing enforcement work. It's definitely a young man's job. It's a good job for detectives in their 20s or plainclothes officers on departments in their 30s. Once you start getting up a little bit more in age, you probably don't want to be working all night or early mornings, or both early mornings and nights, because, you just tend to slow down. That's just the way it is. But I'm going to do a future one, again, as I said, on how to write up your resume for Schedule B hiring, particularly for the marshals. And then I'll do one on DEA task forces, something I'm something of an expert in because I supervised a bunch of them. So hope this was informative. Hope you have a good night. And thank you for watching, and thank you for all the kind comments. God bless.